Section 60 of 5-Minute Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 5-Minute Stories by Laura E. Richards. Goosey Lucy's New Year's Calls. "Where are you going, Uncle Fred?" asked Lucy. "I am going to make New Year's calls, little girl," replied Uncle Fred. "And how do you make them? What are they made of?" inquired Lucy. "Oh, my dear child," said Uncle Fred, who was looking for his umbrella in a great hurry. They're made of nothing. You just call, on all the people you know. Oh, here it is. Goodbye, little girl. I must be off." And off he hurried, leaving Lucy mystified in the hall. "You just call?" she repeated. "Just call all the people you know? Why, that is easy enough, but what a funny thing to do." She pondered a few minutes and then continued, "I think I will go and make New Year's calls. It must be great fun. Perhaps I shall meet Uncle Fred, and then we can call together, and that will be just twice as loud." Away ran the little girl to her room. Blue coat, blue leggings, blue-mitted swan's-down hood, all were on in 3 minutes' time. And without a thought of Mamma or Nurse or anybody else, Lucy slipped out of the door and ran merrily down the street. Oh, how fresh and clear the air was! How the snow sparkled in the sunlight! What a fine thing it was to make New Year's calls! And now the question was, where should she call first? Why, at Grandma's, of course. Her house was in the square, just around the corner. And then she would go to Aunt Maria's, and then, well, she would think about the next place as she went along. But here was Grandmamma's house right now. Lucy looked up at all the windows, but no one was in sight. So much the better. She planted herself squarely in the curbstone, and opening her mouth to its fullest extent, shouted, "Grandmamma! Grandmamma! Grandmamma! Grandmamma!" Her grandmother, who was sitting quietly by the fire reading, heard the piercing screams, and running to the window as fast as her dear old feet could carry her, saw Lucy panting and crimson, with her mouth just opening for another shout. Something had happened at home, an accident probably. No time to be lost. Grandmamma threw up the sash. "Run and call the doctor!" she cried. "Quick, dear, don't stop to tell me about it, but run! I will be there in 3 minutes." And she shut the window, and trembling with anxiety, hastened to put on her shawl and bonnet, and almost ran through the snow to her daughter's house. Meanwhile, Lucy ran on in high glee. "I hadn't thought of the doctor," she said, "but of course I will go there as Grandmamma wishes it. What fun it is!" The doctor's house was soon reached, and Lucy's shouts brought the good man quickly to the door. "Bless me," he said, "Mrs. Graham's little girl. Baby ill again, I suppose? All right, my dear," he cried to Lucy. "I'll be there instantly. Run and tell them I'm coming." And he shut the door and called for his boots. Lucy danced along, enchanted with her new play, and soon reached Aunt Maria's house, where she called again with might and main. Now Aunt Maria was slightly deaf, and when she heard her own name resounding in a clear, shrill scream, "Aunt Maria!" she thought it was a cry of fire. Throwing up the window, she was a very nervous and excitable person. She shrieked, "Fire! Fire! Police! Watchmen! Help! Help! Fire! Fire!" till everyone within a dozen blocks heard her and came rushing to the rescue with buckets and fire extinguishers. Lucy was rather frightened at all this, and thought, on the whole, she would not make any more calls that day. So she went home, and there were Grandmamma and the doctor and Mamma, all waiting for her with very grave faces. The 2 first had arrived breathless and agitated, inquiring what had happened and who was ill. Much perplexity followed, and now that the author of all the mischief had arrived, what should be done to her? Lucy's finger went into her mouth, and her head went down. But she told her story truthfully, and was such a funny one that the doctor burst into a roar of laughter, and Grandmamma laughed heartily, and even Mamma could not look grave. So Goosey Lucy had a lecture and a New Year's cookie and went to tell her dolls all about it, while Mamma and Grandmamma and the doctor went to see how Aunt Maria was. End of Goosey Lucy's New Year's Calls. Recording by Katrina Yankovichuta.